Okay, now before we start really getting going with Model of Christian Charity, this is the PDF file, and it's separate from the text itself. So it's under course materials, course information, right there. Good. Now, when we take a look at this document, what do we see? It provides religious, political, social, and economic guidelines for the Puritans. Wow. Religious, political, social, and economic guidelines. Wow, that's really interesting. Lots of stuff going on here in this short document, which again, I counted 27 times that Winthrop says God. Now, today going through and reading a Model of Christian Charity, it strikes us a little bit different than most things that we're used to reading. This is very close to what a Puritan sermon would be. This is what it's meant to mimic. In that there's ideas that are put forth, then there's rhetorical questions. Like in the text it says question, then answer. These questions were not being asked by the Puritans themselves, the people in the congregation, but this is what Winthrop would do, or other pastors would do when they would preach. They would say, well, what's a question that someone might ask? And then they come up with the response. It's similar to being a lawyer and coming up with anticipating a rebuttal from your opposition and coming up with a way to knock down that rebuttal ahead of time. So now, Winthrop tells us that there's two basic rules that's going to govern the Massachusetts Bay Colony, right? So Plymouth, Massachusetts Bay Colony, right? Even though there's both in the state of Massachusetts. Plymouth, Massachusetts Bay. Test question. Okay, now there's two rules, and I'm reading here. That's how the paragraph begins. There are two rules whereby we are to walk towards one another: justice and mercy. Now, the first time that I encountered this text and I hit that, I was like, justice and mercy? Huh. Well, those seem to contradict each other, don't they? Right? Because justice is following rules, following the law, but then mercy seems to be, cutting somebody a break, ignoring that. But as we see, we'll have this explained in greater detail by Winthrop. So the first question in our sermon: what rule shall a man observe in giving in respect of the measure? So giving. If the time and occasion be ordinary, he is to give out of his abundance. Let him lay aside as God hath blessed him. If the time and occasion be extraordinary, he must be ruled by them, taking this withal, that when a man cannot likely do too much, especially if he may leave himself and his family under probable means of comfortable subsistence. So in other words, we're supposed to give, right? Give freely, but we can't do too much that it would hurt us or our family, right? So if someone needs something, I'm supposed to give it freely, but I can't give everything away because then my family would be destitute, and then I'll have to turn around and someone have to give to me. Kind of balanced out. What about the objection there? What about laying up for posterity? In other words, shouldn't I save my wealth instead of giving it away to other people in the Massachusetts Bay Colony? Shouldn't I save my wealth? And no, we should not save up our wealth. That's not a good thing. Saving is not good. Now, under the question, what rule must we observe in lending? So this is interesting, right? So this is some economics here. There's giving freely, and then lending. What's the difference? When you lend someone some money, it's not a gift, right? Giving is a gift. So if you ever give someone money, right, don't expect it back. Don't try to take them to court because it's not going to work. It's a gift. But then when you lend, what's the rule then thou must observe whether thy brother hath present or probable or possible means of repaying thee. So in other words, when you lend someone money, you have to determine whether or not that brother, that Christian brother, has means of repaying. Now, if you know in your heart of hearts that that person has no means to repay, then guess what? It's a gift. Why? Because that person cannot repay. It's no longer a loan. But if that person does have means, then you get to charge interest. Wow. Yeah, economics here, guys. In other words, you look and you're like, well, Brother Kevin, he's from a wealthy family. He owns the general store. He needs some money so he can buy a new wagon. I'm going to lend him this, and I'm going to charge him interest because I know he can pay me back. But Brother Derek over here, I know that Derek, his father recently died, and his ox fell down a well. He's struggling just to make it. So when I present this money to him, I know it's not a loan, it's a gift, so I can't expect repayments. When I go into this, I have to go into it as such. Very interesting guidelines here. What rule must we observe in forgiving a debt? Whether thou didst lend by way of commerce or in mercy, right? So that was mercy and then commerce. If he hath nothing to pay thee, thou must what? Forgive. So in other words, if something happens with Brother Derek and calamity of calamities, his store burns down and all of his oxen run off into the woods or taken by Indians, some terrible things happen and he falls on hard times, then guess what? It's okay. The debt is forgiven. The loan, you don't have to pay me back. So what happens here is that Winthrop is knowingly setting out these rules so that what can happen for this community. He wants this community to do this, right? Because we have to remember, this is the equivalent of going where today? To the moon. If this group of people, once they get things set up here, right, and they start their community in this colony, if they experience discord and infighting and trouble, then Winthrop knows that everything's going to fall to pieces. And then it's not good. So Winthrop then spends going through talking a lot about how the Massachusetts Bay Colony is like the body of Christ. It's an extended metaphor that they're bound together with love. The ligaments of this body, the body of Christ, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, knit together with love. No body can be perfect which wants its proper ligament. So there's this joining together. This colony is not meant to be independent, but interdependent. And that's what Winthrop wants to do here as he's establishing a city on the hill in Massachusetts Bay Colony. Wow. So a quick little look there at colonial settlements. William Bradford and the Separatists, the Pilgrims today, the Plymouth Colony, the Puritans. John Winthrop wanted to reform the church from within. Massachusetts Bay Colony. So, until we meet again, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.